Welcome back to another edition. As you know, I've talked more and more about the combination of IFS and money. IFS in financial coaching, financial therapy. And IFS is a therapeutic modality, much like cognitive behavioral theory, narrative theory, Gestalt. Maybe you could add motivational interviewing, positive psychology, just all the different ways that you can approach making sense out of our inner world and the decisions and the behaviors that we manifest. There's no doubt in my mind that IFS offers a powerful roadmap for healing internal conflict. But what happens when IFS is applied rather than in a therapeutic context to a coaching context? And what happens when that path starts to become overregulated or blurred to the point of confusion? So in this episode, I want to walk through the promise and pitfalls of integrating internal family systems into financial coaching as opposed to financial therapy. Now, you might be ready to turn off the podcast if you are more of a consumer wanting to learn more about financial therapy, or the decisions you're making financially. I have been told one of the criticisms or shortfallings of my podcast is that you really don't know who I'm going to be talking to when you tune in. And I accept that, because some days I may be talking to the average consumer. Other days I might be talking a little bit more toward financial planners. Other times a little more toward financial therapists. And I can appreciate that. I've actually been advised to split this podcast into 3 so that I could really target each group. And someday I may do that. I still have a day job, though, running a financial planning firm. So that isn't lost upon me. I know I wander around, and this podcast is more about what's on my mind right now. And I do speak to a number of people. So if you're a financial therapist or a coach, I think you'll find this interesting. If you're an IFS financial therapist or coach, you'll really find this interesting, maybe. If you are a consumer of financial therapy, or especially if you're interested in IFS financial therapy, I think this will have some usefulness to you, because I'm going to be talking about how those services are evolving. I mean, let's face it, if you want an IFS financial therapist, I don't know, there's just a handful in the nation right now. It's growing. It will become a thing. I'm probably out ahead of things by, I don't know, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, similar to financial therapy when I started dabbling in just financial therapy. I was probably 10 years, I certainly was 10 years ahead of the Financial Therapy Association being formed. So I think the same thing is true with this idea of expanding IFS into our internal financial system. So hopefully you will gain something from my ramblings today. So what I'm talking about today is integrating IFS into financial life planning or financial coaching. It's pretty clear to me what IFS looks like when we integrate it into financial therapy. If you know the IFS process, it's the same exact process. It's the same exact training that anyone trained in the IFS model is going to follow. There is just simply an overlay of the theme of money. So where in unfettered traditional IFS, you have burdens, and you will address those burdens, or they're simply beliefs, and usually beliefs that don't serve us well, that very young parts of us adapt. We're looking for the financial beliefs. And oftentimes, because of the work that I did with the Clances in developing the idea of money scripts, those are beliefs we have about money. In IFS, those are really money burdens. And we often start with the money script to track down the part that believes that. So that might be a little bit of a unique way that we get into the IFS parts work, as it's referred to. And then also there can be a component of financial therapy, and you've heard me say this many times on the podcast, that really, when we talk about dollars and cents, I'm thinking about a session I had with a client recently. Our last 2 sessions have been about kind of an analysis of her business and talking a lot about norms in business and troubleshooting things and getting data together. So you'd almost think it was a financial coaching engagement. The difference is this owner has identified a part of her that is really causing resistance to doing the things that she needs to do to make her business successful. And even recently, she did a lot of inquiry journaling, reflecting on her family, and found out that these beliefs that are holding her back have been handed down literally for generations. So we've done what we can do to kind of get a handle on all the finances. We have found a major player, a major protector in the system that is actually impeding progress. And that's where we'll go next. And this is, I just say that because it comes to mind. This is so typical in working with any client around money blockages, money behaviors, decisions that just aren't serving them well. Okay, so that's financial therapy, which is not financial planning. Financial planning is completely different. But how about this thing called coaching? Financial coaching. And in financial coaching, and I'm thinking of my friend Sandra Davis that has a financial coaching program. She has a financial coaching certification now that she has worked so hard to receive and is absolutely deserving. There's other folks out there that have financial coaching programs. I think Sandra's is the only one that is certified by, I think, the ICF. And she does not teach or train IFS method in her coaching. So financial coaching, just like financial therapy, is a thing to itself. And there's different ways you can implement that. The thinking is right now, and has been, I mean, this thought's been around for a few years. Can a coach use IFS and not do the work with the exiles? And this is being hotly debated in IFS, the IFS community. The thinking is this, is you've got to be trained and you've got to know what you're doing in IFS to get the permission of a protector that's protecting a vulnerable part, a wounded part, and actually go to the exile, witness it, learn its story, and help it release and become liberated from the beliefs that it carries. And I had a conversation a month or so ago with Dick Schwartz, the founder of IFS, and he said it's going to the exile. This is the more of the therapeutic part of IFS, where training in the whole model needs to be done. Well, why is that important? Most modalities, most therapeutic modalities, let's say like CBT, and I mean no disrespect to CBT, but they're dealing with the manager, they're dealing with the protector, they're dealing with the part that says, I want to be perfect, I want to do this right, that's trying really hard to manage things, to manage the finances. And they're called protectors because they're doing this so an exile doesn't get triggered. An exile that was wounded years ago when it was maybe criticized by parents, or a case that I've talked about a lot. The child's money disappears because the parents go bankrupt, or the parents actually steal the money. And this feeling of vulnerability and hurt and confusion and fear that this happened. And we're talking to a child here that has no context around this. A part of ourselves says, wow, we're never going near that again. So you could call it a coping mechanism, but a protector part says, yeah, we'll never save money ever again. We'll save it and make sure we have something for ourselves. And this concept plays out in a million different ways. I could talk for hours on different scenarios here, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. So a lot of coaching and just a lot of therapeutic modalities work with the managers and try to get the managers to do a better job of managing. And this can work. This can work. We can have progress. Ultimately, though, if that wounded part of ourselves isn't liberated or in some way emotionally healed, we can just visit this over and over and over and over again. So that's why the IFS process is so unique in the way, the methodology, the terminology that it uses to explore the inner financial landscape, the inner family system, as IFS would call it. So there is some advantage of parts talk then in financial coaching. In other words, if I am your financial planner and you are aware of IFS and you're kind of aware of these parts within you and you've done some work, if I can talk to you in terms of parts language, in the terms of, okay, we've got the spending part of you that is doing this. We have the saving part of you that wants to do this. So that would be a typical polarization. That can start framing things up. I mean, I wouldn't have to be doing IFS therapy. I can talk in IFS parts talk. And it really reframes things. I think it's pretty powerful between a couple. For example, when one is angry and says, I am so angry at you, go, blah, 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 right? How does it shift if your partner says, a part of me is so angry with you? And we've talked about this before on the podcast. Just see what happens in your body when you reframe that, I am so angry with you, to a part of me is so angry with you. Kind of a small shift, but it's really big, because that means not all parts of me are angry with you. A part of me is angry with you. So it's the same thing with when we're talking about financial decisions. A part of me wants to do this particular decision. A part of me wants to do that. A part of me believes the rich are evil. That is quite different from all of me believes the rich are evil. In that we know that's a money script, right? And our logical parts can possibly make the case to us that, well, probably not all rich people are evil. There might be one or two out there that aren't. And that can allow us what we would call a little space, a little separation of, this isn't all of me that is believing this. There's a part of me that absolutely believes that. And there's another part of me that logically says, I don't know that's really true. And it honors both of those positions. IFS is a very gentle and non-judgmental modality of viewing our internal landscape and our internal financial landscape. So, I know it sounds like I'm rambling, but I'm trying to make a point, and the point is there could be some benefit if I, as your financial planner, can talk in parts talk, where we can talk about that part of you that is concerned about the longevity of your money, that it is fearful that you'll run out, or the part of you that really wants to enjoy your money today, and the part that wants to save, the part that wants to do an estate plan, the part that doesn't, and we can just go on and on and on and on with polarizations. Or a part of you that believes this is how I've got to do it because this is how my family always did it. So that's where we're going with this, is what would happen if a financial coach would be able to talk in parts talk, or would know enough about IFS to talk in parts talk. And yet, maybe is not trained in the whole IFS protocol of what do you do when you come along or discover an exile, which all protectors are protecting an exile. All managers are protecting an exile. And the thinking is that somehow with IFS coaching, you could make a decision as a coach when you come into something, and most exiles have been traumatized in one way or another, and I use traumatized differently than some psychologists do. So if you're one of those psychologists, bear with me a little bit. But they're all wounded. And what do you do, especially if you don't feel comfortable, or especially if you're not trained, with those exiles? Because until the exile is healed, permanent and lasting behavioral change is probably not going to happen. Okay. So for 40 years, up until January of 2024, IFSI, the IFS Institute, trained both licensed and non-licensed people in IFS, gave them the same training, because a big part of IFS is dropping your agenda. Coaches tell me that they've got to drop their coaching agenda and things that they've been trained in coaching to facilitate IFS. Therapists definitely need to unlearn a lot of things to implement IFS. So IFS it has a real structure of facilitating self-discovery, not advising or judging on what you as a client or the client needs to do. So this is very different, and this is why for 40 years Dick Schwartz and the Institute trained both licensed and non-licensed people. And I was fortunate that I was one of those that was able to be trained in 2020, not being a licensed therapist. So it was in January 2024 that the Institute decided they would no longer train non-licensed people in IFS. And they would instead come up with a coaching track where they could train coaches in the IFS model, but not train them in helping the exile liberate, unburden, or heal the beliefs that were really perpetuating the triggers and the woundedness. Well, this is turning out to be quite problematic. And to this effect, there's been a handful of us getting together that are IFS therapists. All of us have a financial background, or certified coaches, who are trying to figure this out. How do you train a coach to not go to exiles, or when to refer out? How much do you train them in the whole IFS process? Do you just train them to identify the exile and that's when they stop? And I don't know if you've ever had an IFS therapy. Can you imagine you found the exile and the exile is presenting itself and you just kind of stop it? I mean, it's possible that you can do that. But sometimes the liberation of the exile goes very quickly. It's sometimes almost spontaneous. So there's just a whole lot of questions around How do we do this? How do we train coaches to talk in parts language, but in some way not deal with the exile and refer out at that point? So that kind of frames it up, and I've almost taken the whole whole podcast to frame it up. But that's it. So IFS gives us a language for internal conflict. It gives us a language for resistance and self-sabotage. And these are things that traditional financial planning and if financial coaching struggle to address. As one person told me, IFS gives us a framework to be curious, to say, you're not implementing the advice I gave you. And instead of offering more advice, I can explore what part of you might be in conflict, right? So you go to a financial professional, you say, I want some advice here. The professional gives you some advice and it doesn't happen. And rather than piling on, let me give you more advice as to why this isn't working, it gives you a tool to get curious, to explore the part of you that's in conflict. And part of this whole thing too, in training coaches and whatever training that we can train IFS coaches in, is we're not just training a tool that's used on clients, but it's a tool that you can share with them, because it's really important that the coach, the practitioner, the therapist in IFS therapy has done their own work first. This isn't a formula. You just don't do parts talk. Like if you've listened to this podcast, you say, oh, great, I'll start talking in parts language to my clients. That probably isn't going to work without a deeper understanding of the whole system and how it works, how we put that together. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it in this session. And I will pick up with this in the next episode in talking a little bit more about this Trojan horse of training and how important self-awareness is first. So thanks for joining me.